Once a student is engaged with a learning opportunity, a channel of communication opens up that can lead to learning, but much depends on the quality of that communication. There is so much information in our brains from the outside world and our memory that we could attend to. And not all of it is relevant to what we are trying to learn. And we've seen that our working memory is a limited workspace, a type of bottleneck that constrains what can enter our consciousness. So we don't want to waste our working memory capacity on irrelevant or unhelpful information that distracts us and effectively blocks up the flow of relevant information. So anything that occupies our working memory that is not about the learning can actually undermine our ability to learn. That's how distraction works. So if you take novelty, for example, that will stimulate the brain's reward system and it can improve our engagement. But if the novelty is not related to the learning, then it can also increase that unnecessary burden on our working memory and reduce our learning. So once again, the science doesn't tell us what we should do, but the science can tell us how and why an approach may sometimes work and sometimes not work, and that can help improve that approach. So let's imagine that new information has entered the working memory networks of our student. The student is consciously attending to it. But that new information has to be connected to prior knowledge for it to be meaningful. The student has to connect it with what he or she already knows. Making these connections involves working memory, but also additional frontal regions of the brain along the inside wall of the hemisphere. These frontal regions of the brain develop throughout childhood and adolescence. This chart shows how the synapses or connections between neurons in the brain develop with age. Look at the increases and decreases in number of synapses, with decreases suggesting a pruning of those connections that are less useful, so improving brain efficiency. Notice how the frontal lobes develop later than auditory and visual cortex. We have seen how involved the frontal lobes are with learning, so this graph is really telling us that all of childhood, including adolescence, can be a special time for learning. But this long period of development not only means that we have less working memory capacity, it also means that we have a reduced ability when we are children to be able to connect to prior knowledge. So the younger the student, the more support they may need in connecting what they are learning today with what they already know. We have been talking about a teacher who is aware that they are communicating information to a student who is conscious that they are receiving it. But teachers and students can communicate with each other in ways that both may be unaware of. Scientists now know that each of us possess a mirror neuron system that activates not just when we carry out a movement, but also when we watch others carrying out the movement. So when I move my hands like this, parts of your brain are activating as if you were moving your hands in the same way. This network includes a region in the parietal lobe that puts together what you're looking at into a recognizable movement that you would make yourself, and a frontal region that relates this to the goal of the movement, why you would make it. This is true for big movements, but it's also true for those little movements that we observe in each other's faces. These can be very small changes, just micro expressions. Even though we may not be aware of it, our mirror neuron system responds when we see emotion in the faces of others as if we were experiencing the same emotions ourselves. This unconscious emotional communication is helpful for developing empathy with each other. In other words, experiencing each other's emotions. Our mirror neuron system can help transmit feelings and thoughts between teachers and students without either being aware of it. Think about what this means for modelling, which usually means a teacher behaving in a way that they would like their students to behave. The existence of the mirror neuron system seems to be telling us that a teacher must also think and feel in the way that they want their students to think and feel. So in this video, we've learnt how clear and concise instruction and avoiding distraction can reduce unnecessary burden on working memory, how new information must be connected to prior knowledge for it to be meaningful, and how younger students may need more support in making that connection, and the role of the mirror neuron system in how we communicate our thoughts and feelings, often unconsciously.